drove from Missouri to Alcatraz, and I made a bunch of connections there while I was there. And we are hearing from detainees who are communicating with their family members that for the past 48 hours, they have been moving people en masse very quickly. People are watching the cages next to them be completely emptied. They're moving hundreds of people at once, and we were trying to figure out why. And they were told today that the facility is closing. We don't know why, we don't know if it's temporary, but people are being scattered across detention facilities across the country. We don't know what's happening to them. They haven't even had the opportunity to have access to legal services yet. I don't know how to track them. They're not showing up on the ICE locator. There's nobody to call. I don't know how to help them. We need help. And we don't know what's going on.
But never ask. And also, I forgot. What gives me the impression that his spouse, Rick Scott's spouse, is as morally corrupt as he is? Aside from being married to him, in 2011, when Rick Scott was the governor of Florida, he enacted legislation that required welfare recipients to drug test in order to prove their worthiness to get benefits. And that included Medicare and Medicaid. And they would have to do these drug tests at their own expense. And they could only be reimbursed through Medicaid if they tested negative. And if they tested positive, they would lose benefits for a year or more, which I find to be real fucking rich, by the way. Considering the fact that he just came off of being the CEO and chairman of Columbia HCA, which while he was CEO and chairman, throughout that 10-year period of time, they were accused to have been committing the largest scale Medicare and Medicaid fraud in the country's history. But he wants to make sure his constituents prove their worthiness. They can't be scamming us for a $50 medication and a $100 doctor's visit. As a reminder, his company had to pay back $1.7 billion, which I am sure, I don't know, double check, is probably a fraction of what they actually stole. But anyway, I find that real fucking rich. Anyhow, this requirement to drug test became a huge issue and a conflict of interest because his wife still owned Solantic. Solantic was the urgent care clinic that he opened up, or the chain of urgent care clinics that he opened up after he left Columbia HCA with his $10 million golden parachute and $300 million in stock options. And Solantic offered drug testing and stood to benefit from this. By October of 2011, the federal courts had issued an injunction, and it went up to the 11th Circuit, U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, who upheld the injunction and said, this is completely fucking unconstitutional. It's absolutely a violation of Fourth Amendment, unreasonable searches and seizures. And by 2015, he stopped trying to appeal it. So I don't know how much they ended up benefiting. They tried. And hey, just because something's in your wife's name, does that mean you have no access to it? Not you, Chris. Anyone.
So we have some breaking news on, of all people, Marilyn Monroe. Now, the man who autopsied Marilyn says the official story is wrong, and for 60 years, he wasn't allowed to tell the truth. Dr. Thomas Naguchi was just 35 years old when he was assigned to examine the body of the most famous woman in the world. She was found nude, face down, her hand still resting on the phone, and the official cause of death was listed as probable taking her own life from sleeping pills. But Dr. Naguchi says that never added up, and here were the first red flags. He was brand new, still on probation, and somehow he got handed this massive celebrity case. Not the chief coroner, not even a senior pathologist. But he did the autopsy professionally, and what he found was interesting. And what he didn't find was even more interesting. Now, what he found were fatal levels of barbiturates in her blood, but what he didn't find were any pills, not even pill residue in her stomach. There were also no needle marks anywhere on her body, despite conspiracy theories that you might have heard. And then get this, the toxicology lab decided not to test her organs further. They destroyed the samples before any follow-up could happen. Dr. Naguchi wanted more tests. He had questions, but he was silenced. And look, I know that you guys are wondering how old Dr. Naguchi is, given the fact that this happened so long ago. But this is him, and at 98 years old, he's finally speaking out because what does he have to lose? So what was it? Did she take her own life, or was she silenced? Make sure to follow and let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to check out my Substack where the full breakdown is already up. This one runs deeper than we were ever told, y'all.
If you still have Instagram, then I'm sure that you have seen that Meta has pretty much doxed everybody, because this new map feature that they have pretty much shows exactly where you are. And no, not the state, not just the city, not even the county. It shows which street you're on. And oh yeah, for people who are not even sharing their location, it will still show you on the map. When folks talk about surveillance, this is surveillance. And Black folks, specifically Black women, folks with children, this is a problem. When I first got on TikTok, I used to talk about my location. Sometimes I would be walking around my neighborhood because travel and expatriation was a part of the things that I was talking about. And then it got to the point where people started asking me where I was getting my nails done, where my son went to school. So I stopped sharing any bit of information relative to my location. And even when I travel, it has always been a rule of thumb that I do not post in real time and I do not pin where it is that I am in real time. Because the people that are following you are not the only people that are following you. So if you still actually have Instagram, double, triple, and quadruple check that your location is completely turned off.
First alert out of Anderson County, where officials say a former Anderson school board member and a deputy is charged with child sex crimes.
Anderson County man accused of criminal sexual abuse of a minor.
Anderson County tonight, a school board member accused of child sex crimes has now resigned.
Craig Hayden is charged with criminal sexual conduct with a minor and attempted criminal sexual conduct with a minor. It happened last month. Officials say Hayden picked up a child to play basketball.
Greg Hayden is charged with criminal sexual conduct with a minor. Deputies say he picked up a child to go play basketball, and nearby drivers saw signs of sexual abuse happening in his truck. Deputies say he knows the child through a church program.
Authorities say he knew the child through a church mentorship program.
They say Hayden is not related to the victim, but knew them through a church mentorship program.
Hayden is a board member at Anderson School District 1, so our team reached out to them for a statement. The district tells us he has resigned effective immediately. Now, Hayden also used to work for the sheriff's office. Today, he appeared in court where a judge set his bond at $100,000.
They were informed of the investigation last week and placed Hayden on administrative leave. He has since resigned. District 1 says Hayden has resigned effectively immediately. A preliminary trial is set for October 30th. If convicted, he could face life as a felon.
Breaking news. FBI, this according to Bloomberg, FBI redacted Trump's name in the Epstein files. The Bureau's FOI, or Freedom of Information Act team tasked with conducting a final review of the records blacked out the names before higher-ups said last month that releasing the documents would not be appropriate or warranted. Something is fishy here. That team tasked with conducting a final review of the voluminous cache had applied the redactions before the Department of Justice and the FBI concluded last month that no further disclosure of the files would be appropriate or warranted. From the government's perspective, Trump was a private citizen when the Epstein investigation took place and therefore is entitled to privacy protections. You guys get the bullshit that's going on?
A lot of you will probably think this headline is funny, but I actually think it's sad. So unfortunately, a bunch of people in Florida have gotten E. coli from drinking raw milk. But the sad part is 6 of them are children under the age of 10. And these kids obviously don't have access to buying their own food or understanding our food system. They're just consuming what they're being given by their parents. And honestly, I think these people should be charged with child abuse. 7 of the people are currently hospitalized, and we have all the information that we need to tell you, like, do not drink unpasteurized milk. That's not new information. Everyone knows that. But these MAGA trends get passed around and people make these decisions and they probably don't realize what the potential consequences could be. And then again, now we have a bunch of children that are ill and people that are hospitalized. They always seem to end up creating their own consequences, and that would be fine if a bunch of other people weren't constantly getting hurt in the process.
We're taking care of our farmers. We can't let our farmers not have anybody, these people, you can't replace them very easily. People that live in the inner city are not doing that work. They're just not doing that work. And they've tried, we've tried, everybody tried. They don't do it. These people do it naturally. I said, what happens if they get it to a farmer the other day? What happens if they get a bad back? He said, they don't get a bad back, sir, because if they get a bad back, they die. I said, that's interesting, isn't it?
Besides those of color, figure, and hair, there are other physical distinctions proving a difference of race. They have less hair on the face and body. They secrete less by the kidneys and more by the glands of the skin, which gives them a very strong and disagreeable odor. This greater degree of transpiration renders them more tolerant of heat and less so of cold than the whites. Perhaps, too, a difference of structure in the pulmonary apparatus, which a late ingenious experimentalist has discovered to be the principal regulator of animal heat, may have disabled them from extricating in the act of inspiration so much of that fluid from the outer air, or oblige them in expiration to part with more of it. They seem to require less sleep. A black, after hard labor through the day, will be induced by the slightest amusements to sit up till midnight or later, though knowing he must be out with the first dawn of the morning. They are at least brave and more adventuresome. Thomas Jefferson, 1853. Thomas Jefferson, a slaveholder with no medical training, posited that black people's lung structure made them well suited for slavery. This idea gets embedded into the medical system, so that even until recently today, there was a controversial race adjustment of spirometer measured lung capacity for black people. This was not based in medicine at all, but medical decisions were being made for black people based on false assumptions about the black body. I hope you learned something new.
Donald Trump this morning said that Republicans are entitled to 5 more seats out of Texas. What a fascinating word to choose. This is what we tell our kids in school, right? We get to vote. People go represent us. And that's what Texas is threatening now in an extraordinarily dramatic way.
If you're not paying attention to what's happening in Texas right now, you need to be. If you are paying attention to what's happening in Texas right now, I have some information for you. That guy from the opening clip, his name is John Bizignano. He is the president of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. That is an independent watchdog group, an activist group that's been around since 2017. The reason the NDRC exists is because gerrymandering does happen. And they have been very successful in bringing forth litigation and taking states and different counties to court for gerrymandering districts against the voters' wishes. And John, as the president of the NDRC, is literally a subject matter expert in gerrymandering. And he is ringing the bell right now about what's happening in Texas because the 2026 election is being rigged right in front of our face. I had a chance to sit down and talk with John. Here's the interview.
We've been in litigation in Texas for the past 3 years, just trying to ungerrymander the current map, let alone what they're about to do it now. So you're about to see a gerrymander on top of a gerrymander.
So somebody who understands this better than me or the average American, because you've spent the last 8 years watching congressional maps and keeping track of them. If California and New York and these other blue states follow through and gerrymander their maps to lean left in response to Texas's lean right, how dramatic of a shift is that in our congressional politics, congressional picture? Is it as dramatic as it seems, or are we overreacting?
No, I don't think we're overreacting at all. And I think it's a dramatic landscape shift for Congress generally. And it's not a great one. This is not something anybody wants. And seemingly most Texas Republicans don't want. This is something Donald Trump alone is driving with Greg Abbott's permission. And what we're talking about from a national landscape perspective is trying to get back to a place where it is reasonable and representative.
This is all an attempt for Republicans to rig the 2026 midterms that they see themselves inevitably losing because of the poor policies they're passing. Is that a valid argument, or are people, again, overreacting?
100%. It's not a conspiracy. It's blatant. What they're trying to do, they're petrified, right? And Donald Trump, I'm not sure I've ever seen a president operate this weakly. This is a man who claims to be so strong and powerful, and yet he goes out and he is publicly saying, I need to cheat to win. My ideas are catastrophic. The bill we passed, the budget bill, is one of the worst, least popular bills anyone's ever seen. I've never seen a bill that unpopular, but on both sides of the aisle. And yet they passed it through, and now they're looking around a boardroom and saying, hey, we got to fight.
So Tuesday morning, August 5th, there's a little bit of stuff going on in Donald Trump's lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal. I think he's suing for defamation for the story that the Wall Street Journal ran about Jeffrey Epstein's little birthday book that had a note in there, allegedly, that was signed by Donald Trump, containing a sketch of a nude woman and some words written inside that were clearly not authored by Donald Trump about, a day of secrets, or Donald Trump doesn't have that command over the English language. But the Wall Street Journal didn't say that he wrote those words. They just said, hey, here's this thing, and we've confirmed that it exists. So something to know about federal court versus state court. in the realm of like civil litigation, not criminal prosecutions. So Donald Trump filed a civil lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch. Those kinds of cases in state court can take years. In federal court, they set a calendar for things. They keep shit moving. Things move quickly, rapidly. And one of the things that's different in federal court is the whole discovery process. And discovery is just it's the process in a civil lawsuit where each side basically exchanges all the evidence they have with the other side. Because if you're going to use something at trial, you have to give it to the other side beforehand. And it's not just limited to things that you're going to use during trial. Within certain boundaries, basically any information, documentation, witness testimony, anything you can imagine, audio recordings, video that's relevant to the case, each side has to exchange that with the other side. And that includes scheduling things like depositions, where one side gets to ask the other side questions under oath. But those schedules are fast in federal court. They're uncomfortably fast, for attorneys, because they really keep those cases moving. Sometimes you can kick out the schedule for things and extend things by stipulation. If the parties agree with each other, we're going to postpone these certain things. And so apparently Trump's side and Rupert Murdoch's side, they have agreed to postpone or extend the discovery process in this case. Why does that matter? Well, look at who the plaintiff and the main defendant are, Donald Trump and Rupert Murdoch, both of whom are going to be deposed in this case. That's the thing that Donald Trump never considers when he files civil lawsuits against literally everybody. Sooner or later, those people are going to take your deposition. And the meat of this case is Donald Trump's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. So Donald Trump has put at issue his entire friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. And Rupert Murdoch's attorneys are going to get to eventually question Donald Trump under oath about the entire scope of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, under oath, while he's president of the United States of America. To say that deposition, if it does happen, to say that deposition is going to be a fucking shit show is an understatement. And it'll be videotaped, and it will be made public. Because Donald Trump has been pushing over the last month, we need Rupert Murdoch's deposition right now because he's 94 and he's going to die. And they're like, okay, but we get to take yours too. And he's like, whoa. Maybe we should put this off for a little bit. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. So now that has been postponed. And presumably that'll be approved by the judge in the case. But that's the ball game in this case. The deposition of Donald Trump and the deposition of Rupert Murdoch. That's the ballgame. And Donald Trump does not want to have his deposition taken about his entire 15-year-long friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. They were close enough that he ended up in Jeffrey Epstein's little birthday book. And sooner or later, Trump is going to unless he dismisses this lawsuit, he's going to get questioned under oath about his entire friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. And he does not want that to happen. So, Tuesday morning, August 5th, there's a little bit of stuff going on in Donald Trump's lawsuit.
In Southern California has been arrested for essaying several women he met when they called the police for help. Juan Pacina is a police officer in Riverside County. He is said to have essayed several women on duty and off duty. This is said to have been happening for the last several years, at least since 2023, and includes multiple felony charges of forcing women into a lot of terrible things. He was put on administrative leave while the investigation continues, which more often than not means that he will get paid his full salary while they investigate all of the women that he's essayed. Friendly reminder, his salary is funded by taxpayer dollars. It's really devastating how often this happens and has already happened so much in 2025. If you'd like to see a list of all law enforcement officers who have been arrested or sentenced for a crime like this so far in 2025, I have a list in my description on my page.
Y'all, this story has been bothering me for the past several days. I can't get over this. These two young men, Jaden Fleming and Ronnie Burns, they were in Houston this past weekend, visiting Houston for the Texas Greek picnic. They're members of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. They were driving through Midtown Houston at the time when a drunk driver slammed into the car they were in, hit them so hard, the car burst into flames. And these two young men, they died. They died because of the selfish decision of one person. Y'all, pray for these young men's families. They had just graduated from Florida A&M University, had their entire lives ahead of them. And now their families, their parents, have to bury them because of one decision, a selfish decision by one person. Mind you, this drunk driver, only 21 years old himself, now he faces murder charges. At the time, he was being chased by police because he had hit other vehicles, at least one or two of them. I'm an anchor in Houston, Texas, by the way, so this is accurate information you're getting. We got this information directly from police. The driver at the time was being chased because he hit other vehicles in Midtown, and that's when he hit them. Let's just pray. Pray for their families, their loved ones, their chapter. They were members of the Alpha Z chapter at Florida A&M University. And just pray that people make wise and smarter decisions, because one selfish decision can sometimes impact a multitude of people, and it can be fatal. There is a GoFundMe available for these young men, so if you feel compelled to donate, please do. But I just cannot get over this. Like, they had so much life ahead of them. And just a selfish decision, that's all it took. Y'all just pray, and let's just make some smart choices, y'all. All right? All right.
There are no accidents. This derailment was 100% preventable.
I saw that big mushroom cloud. It was like just that big dark cloud over the whole community.
That mushroom cloud was the result of a controlled detonation carried out by the railroad company Norfolk Southern. 1 million pounds of toxic vinyl chloride were burned. It could be years before residents know the full effects of the toxic plume that engulfed their town. But there is one thing we do know, thanks to a recent investigation into Norfolk Southern, which revealed that all of this was unnecessary.
They lied. We didn't need to blow those trains up. They lied.
In March of 2024, after a year-long investigation, the National Transportation Safety Board confirmed what many people had feared.
In order for polymerization to occur, which was Norfolk Southern and their contractor's justification for the vent and burn, you would have to have rapidly increasing temperatures and some sort of infusion of oxygen, neither of which occurred. There was another option. Let it cool down. It was cooling down.
When you look at the railroad industry, there's always something in the back of every decision they make, and that's a profit margin.
There was one promise that Norfolk Southern couldn't walk away from: a class action lawsuit which yielded a $600 million settlement for residents within 20 miles of the derailment.
$600 million is a lot of money, not when it's divided up and divvied up between how many people.
According to the settlement, anyone within 2 miles of the derailment can theoretically get up to $70,000 per household for property damage and up to $25,000 per person for health problems.
Over 4 months in the hotel with food, we ran up over $35,000. We have to give that back. We might get $35,000.
Seems like a dumb question now, but is that enough?
That's not a drop in a bucket. $35,000 towards cancer treatment. Burn it. That's not going to do anything.
$600 million is one of the largest settlements in Norfolk Southern's history. But the company expects most of those costs to be covered by their insurance. So the final cost will be a fraction of the annual revenue for the $62 billion company, which saw its stock fall on February 3rd, 2023, only to completely recover in the months that followed.
They took away my hometown, and they walk around and they made money. What stops them from doing it again? Because it will happen again.
The disaster in East Palestine drew attention to an alarming fact. The railroad industry